of your meetings.
And we're live. All right, sorry, Heiko, go ahead. If you want to spin it off.
I try to, but could be hard because I also not listened the last call again, and yeah, they're pretty prepared. But I guess if I watched the discussion on pull request 9.10, where we talked about the options we provided for 3.0, here we get on a pretty good path how we are able to inline those schemas. And in meantime, we also agreed of that changing $ref to support non-JSON based schemas would not be breaking and could be done. So in my opinion, as soon as we get the pull request 9.910 done, and we get $ref for non-JSON schemas be defined, that's still an open issue. We have no further things to discuss here.
Yeah, I think we left off last time where we stopped at, we're still missing the discussion about references, and then from a tooling perspective, right? Like what's missing there in order to support all of these things. And yeah, otherwise, yeah, I agree. Should we spin it off with references? Because that's where we also kind of left off in the spec 3.0 meeting.
Before, just to clarify, we also talked on one of the meetings about clarifying spec that you can actually stringify the payload. Set as a string, I mean, and adding protobuf and others to the list. Is it still, do we still want to do it for 2.7? So basically, I don't remember just how we concluded with this one.
The spec JSON allowed, but in a spec it was not 100% clear.
Yeah.
So yeah, would you like to take the attempt to change the spec from this point, or?
I'm thinking if it's needed, really, like if we, because it requires like to have it now in, like, because now it's not much time left for April release window, just about 1.5 weeks. So I already dropped the idea of pushing extensions. So the other stuff that I wanted to update in the spec, it can be done in 3.0. So that's why I'm just clarifying if we really need to have this.
My opinion is not, because it's working.
Yeah,
it's tested, it's working, tooling is working. It's only that the text in the spec is not 100% clear.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay. Then let's just then I'll just
let's just focus on the feature.
Yeah. Then let's I'll just communicate in the specification that there's nobody volunteered to release coordinate, and there are no features to push for April release, and that 3.0 is just the focus. Okay, then.
I think it actually makes sense if we do it like this, like that. Either way we would focus in 3.0 because it's going to require a lot of work on the tooling side mainly, right? So so maybe if we remove that noise from 2.7, that will help. It's maybe 2 or 3 days of someone or two people not spending time on this. So that's helpful. 2 or 3 days can be really helpful, given that we were going to stop on February, 1st of March, and it's past mid-April, and we haven't finished yet. So yeah, the more time we bite to tooling, having time to integrate with version 3, the worse, right? That said, we don't have to launch version 3 of the spec. We don't have to release it, and having needed support for on tooling, right? It's not a requirement, although it's really cool that you release it and people immediately can try it, can test it, but it's strong requirement. So yeah, the same.
Okay, so in this case, next point, $ref.
Yay. We love that one.
Yeah.
I got a lift by.
No, you opened PR for $ref modifications already.
No, it was Lucas, I think.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Okay, sorry. So,
But you did as well, Fran, as far as I recall. But you
Yeah,
closed
I
it.
did
So
so I have seen a pretty old one, I guess 2 years old from Fran, modifying $ref.
Yes, this was explored by me on an issue, not a pull request. But at the time, it was like, that's too much. Now we have a community. At the time, it was this really small community around this in KPI. So yeah, like no. Basically, I was the only one developing everything. So I was like, no way. But now, yeah, now we can maintain it. We have people in the community who will be happy to maintain tooling.
So in my opinion, just changing the spec and saying, hey, $ref can point on whatever you want.
Yes, the thing is, what I explored was this JSON pointer. So from the $ref, not the $ref, but the value of the $ref, right? This is a URL that ends with hashtag / whatever, right? So whatever comes after the hashtag is a JSON pointer, right? This is a JSON. It has its own RFC, right? It's a standard and so on. So this is meant just for JSON structures or JSON-like structures. And for instance, protobuf or XML are not JSON-like structures. There's no one mapping, right? And actually, you can see it there when on this issue that you mentioned, that there are situations where this is weird. It might work, but it's a hack. It's effectively a hack on the JSON pointer standard. So yeah, we're trying to become standard ourselves, right? Over time, over the years. A standard that hacks over standards is not really, it's not really cool, I guess, at least in my opinion. So I cannot do any things with my hands. The iPad will react to this. So, so yeah. So what I mean is that maybe if we're gonna do it, we should be suggesting a new syntax, right? Maybe a similar syntax. It can be a similar one, but let's not try to hack JSON pointer. That's all I'm saying. Maybe that new syntax can be defined somewhere else, can be defined in the SMTP spec, can be defined on a separate spec that we create, can be defined somewhere, I don't care. But it will be a defined syntax for specific things, like for instance, for protobuf, for XML or XML-like structures. And there are standards for this already in the case of XML. So you have XPath, for instance. In the case of XML, you have XPath, which is like JSON pointer, but for XML. And for protobuf, I'm not sure if something exists, but we can use the convention, like using the dot instead of slash and things like this. So people familiar with protobuf will feel like this is protobuf, this is not some hack, right? So yeah. But I will make it clear. Whatever we decide, I will make it clear. It's a separate thing. It's not a hack on top of JSON pointer. So yeah.
Yeah, I exactly. And I think it's important that I think the standard behavior should be that you cannot use fragments as part of the reference unless we explicitly state how those fragments should be interpreted.
Yeah.
So for XML, for example, we have XPath, so we can clearly state that for XML you use this syntax, well, this standard. For JSON and YAML and the like, you use JSON path. I can't remember, JSON pointer. And if there is something for protocol, we can use whatever standard there is for that. But on all other formats where we have nothing official or nothing that we can rely on, I think we can default to not allowing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you decide which one is to use based on the file extension, or so if the file ends as .json, JSON
So-
path?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the
Schema
one thing
format?
that I started to pursue was to use our schema format property as guidance towards whatever reference was allowed and what standard to follow. So that means that if your schema format defines that it's protobuf for XML,
sure.
then it follows XYZ.
Good idea.
Because I don't think you can, from the resource itself, interpret whatever underlying resource it is. I might be wrong, but I don't think that's possible.
No, it's not working very well. You have always edge cases where you point on a URL without any file endings. It's not working. Using the schema format is a good idea.
So if we go with that approach, that would mean that we have to split up.
We need 9.10 done first.
9.10.
It's
I
about
can't remember.
allow define schema format other than default. I guess we need this PR be merged before being able to defining the new reference thingy.
Right, so we're talking about this issue right here, right?
Yeah, sure. This one.
Just before we go further, just to clarify. So what you're saying is that we still use JSON reference?
For JSON, yes.
And then like for any, because like to reference just a file, and then fragments in case of different schema.
No, because JSON reference is only for JSON. Whatever is defined within that specification is only relevant to JSON syntax.
Yeah, but
the
Lucas,
JSON standard.
I guess we can use the past parts and everything in front of the hash for most of the formats, but not for all.
Like because there are two parts in $ref, JSON reference and JSON pointer. JSON pointer is what is after the hashtag, right? What's before the hashtag is JSON reference. So JSON reference why can't it point to XML?
Yeah, that should be fine. That would be fine.
But don't we agree that JSON reference is where JSON pointer is included?
Is it? I don't remember if it's.
Yeah, the first pass is just URL. I guess the first pass is always clear and should be the default. If we have an unknown schema format, it just should use the URL part to include, and just include it as it's included as what? As text. So I guess we need to define it for each content type. Not define content type would not work.
One of the reasons why I didn't want to use JSON reference is everywhere it's stated and directly reference JSON values. And that's
sure.
That's why I'm kind of that's why I'm saying that we shouldn't use JSON reference, this standard, for anything other than JSON what's it called? JSON references.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah,
JSON
but the spec
valued
says
references.
should, not must, not shall, but should, which is then not required. I mean the wording, it says should.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty big should.
I mean, according to the spec, like that's why there's a definition of these words. You have this no below in conventions.
Yeah.
So in RFC, when you check the definition of should, I don't think it means you have to.
No, it's optional.
No, you're right. Yeah.
then
It's not
we're-
enforced.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not limited by this sentence.
Yeah, true. I guess we should keep it similar as ever we can, but we need to define in custom thingy like it is similar to JSON ref for XML and a similar thing for protobuf. We should not simply use JSON ref. It would nearly look the same, but it is not the same. There is nothing like this. I guess we need to define it on our own.
Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying, Lucas, because there's a lot of should be interpreted as JSON pointer, like all fragments should be interpreted as JSON pointer, and the same with the value, it should yield a reference JSON value. So it is kind of lenient towards us extending it to being non-JSON as well. But regardless, we would have to extend and specify even further whatever is defined here, right? Like we would have to include it here in the reference object or another object that's only relevant to schema references. But we would have to clarify, right, that if it's XML, then follow, for example, for fragments, then it should follow XPath instead of JSON fragments or
Yeah,
JSON pointer.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so as I understand, what you are thinking of is that we can use JSON reference as the baseline, and then we add something on top of it because it defines it as, well, basically should be interpreted as. That means that we can change whatever that means, right?
Yeah, I guess
And
in
it's still
addition
being-
how the fragments behave for each schema format should be added. For XML, it's easy. You can only say, hey, it's XPath. For protobuf, we need to define, I guess we need to define our own thing because I didn't see here anything.
But for protobuf, do we actually need something beyond just the identifier of the message or identifier of the email?
Yeah, we don't need to identify the message. It's more like message.submessage.
Okay, so you can have sub messages. Okay.
Yeah, you can define it in 2 or 3 sentences, but you need to define it.
Yeah. And I guess you can have sub message of sub message of sub message.
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
Okay. It's not just limited to one level nesting. Okay. So then you need the same kind of structure.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing, or yeah, like JSON pointer or XPath.
Yeah, sure. It's easy to define, but it needs to be done. And we
Yeah,
need to do it for all formats separately.
And it's easy to define and it's easy to be done actually, but it might not be easy to maintain.
What do you think? Because we need to add for each new format, we need to add a section.
No, I mean, to maintain the thing is that we can create that specific format. Like imagine for protobuf we use the dot as a separator. You have message dot sub message, something like that. Then the next thing that we'll probably have to promote is the creation of libraries to support that format, to be able to get the protobuf, parse it, and get into the specific message that the pointer is pointing to, right? Yeah. At least for JavaScript, so the parser can work. But I'm assuming that if someone wants to work with async API on Java, for instance, or in another language, they will also want to have that on their language. So it's one more thing to build that we cannot get from the community, right? That we cannot get something already built. So that's why I was like, it's more maintenance to do, right? On the tooling side mainly. Another thing we can do is, let's try to collaborate on the long term. We can create it ourselves, right? We create it ourselves, but let's speak to protobuf people, right? And we contribute this to protobuf. this pointer syntax or something, and leverage their community to build tooling to parse this syntax, right? So it's not async API maintaining this, but it's protobuf actually maintaining this, right?
Yeah, here's a big problem. Protobuf only provide their own tooling in Java. For JavaScript, there are some community projects, but all of them are not what you want to look at.
Well, yeah, but still, like, even if it's in Java, we're gonna build the JavaScript one ourselves for us. If it's already in Java from the protobuf community, that's, I would say, like, that's more than enough. And if we get some other contributions, but at least we don't have to maintain it ourselves, right? Because it's not related to async API itself, it's related to protobuf, right?
Yep.
So I think it will be on the protobuf community, and I think we can start it ourselves. We can define it. We can build that tool so it doesn't block us, right? But then start the conversation with them to donate that to their project so they can keep maintaining it and keep promoting it over the years, right? Also, if the protobuf version 4 is released and something changes, then they will change that as well. So we don't have to maintain it, right?
And the tool you're talking about is the reference resolving stuff, right? Or
yeah, pointer part. Yeah.
Why would they want to? Like, isn't that specifically in our use case?
It is.
Because all they do is protobuf syntax. That's what they have tooling for. In our case, we are trying to do it with JSON or within a JSON realm, so to say.
But they
why
also
would they have any incentive?
They also maintain other tools that are not specific to the protobuf syntax itself, right? So like serializers, like compilers, compilers of the, I don't know if it's called compiler. It's been a long time. I don't check it. I don't check it protobuf. But other tools not strictly related to the spec, to the specification. Maybe another one that might be, or another part of this project that may be interested is not protobuf, but it's gRPC. So maybe gRPC ends up being interested in pointing to a specific sub message from a gRPC document. So I don't know, just I think it's a good tool to have in their toolbox. And it's not a tool that changes very frequently, right? And they don't have to maintain all the tools, but they can leverage their community to build those tools, right? If they want to, of course, if the community wants to do it. But I don't know, just ideas.
But for us, it's easy to engage with them. So we have Jeremy from Google in TSC.
Yeah.
And he already contributed the Google PubSub binding. And I remember in the binding discussion, we already talked about Proto. So I'm pretty sure that once we ping him into PR, he'll join and share what they are. Because like he's from inside Google, so he will know if there were already some discussions about some spec for pointing to a message in message in message in message.
Also, we're going to face this issue more and more often as we expand to support multi-protocols and different API styles like GraphQL and all of that, or gRPC in the future. This is going to happen, that we will have to be collaborating tightly with many other communities, right? And instead of just being isolated ourselves. So one incentive for them could be, hey, let's just try to join forces together, because you still can, I mean, if people start using protobuf with async API, that's one more reason for people to use protobuf. And that's one more reason for people to use async API. So it's adoption as well, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, makes sense.
Lucas, there is a standard how protobuf messages are defined. So it's a dot separation that is defined, but there is no tooling.
Then perfect. We just have to.
I mean, so then it's good. Like the biggest problem is if there's no standard, then we have to invent the standard and tooling. Like If there's nothing, we just have to provide one.
In this case, the tooling needs to be handled by the schema parser. So we have the schema parser plugins for protobuf, and this one is to be handled by protobuf schema parser.
Not 100% sure. So like basically we will have to have anyway, and like in the parser, we're gonna have to, like basing on schema format, we're gonna have to clarify which which way we use to parse the ref, and then the JSON reference, whatever is the name of this whole package that we use, we will anyway have to have plugins for the ref parser. That in case of XML, then we will have to like hack the not hack, but yeah, plug into the ref resolver for XML and then for Proto. But I don't think it's going to be part of the schema parser, because schema parser is at the end.
Yeah, but the schema parser needs to provide functionality to the main parser to handle those references, because each reference is defined with the schema. So it belongs to the schema. Yeah, so XML needs to provide its own functionality, and protobuf needs to define its own functionality. And if someone comes with some other strange protocol, it needs to be defined by this parser.
Yeah, but it's completely like, let's say, new API for the schema parser.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It can be part of the plugin or whatever.
Yeah, but we don't need to maintain this code. This is to be maintained by the schema parser. And if the schema parser can use a standard library like XPath, it's fine. It's, just to be happy. But if you're a protobuf parser and there is no tooling, like the main part of the protobuf parser is not based on some existing tooling, you need to do it on your own. But it's a problem of the schema parser, not of the async API parser.
Not necessarily, because the thing about schema parser, like the one for Avro and protobuf, it's already operating on like it's operating on resolved, like on visible schema, right? So its goal is just to convert from Avro to JSON schema or from protobuf to JSON schema.
Yeah, sure.
So now it's operating at the end. And what we're talking about is plugging at the very beginning, like the reference resolver. And yeah, if it's gonna be just additional scope of the schema parser to handle, or maybe some different solution, maybe just a code that is included directly in the JSON in the parser, in the JavaScript parser, like it's technical detail. I would say that probably would make sense to actually have a separate package with this logic that resolves this notation that you mentioned with dot. That would be probably the best. So more people can help with maintenance, people that are not with async API and they don't care, but they would need it anyway. But yeah, I think in general it's rather a technical detail. More important is the spec.
Yeah, sure. In the spec, I would define for the main schema formats as is currently in the list, and all custom schema formats as is currently needs to define it on their own way. So at the moment, we are free to add more schema formats. I would only define the reference format for our currently supported schema formats like async API, Avro. I don't know if XML is supported out of box, I guess not. And everything else needs to be defined by the plugins for the toolings. Do you understand what I mean?
I don't
need to define it for every format we don't yet know.
Yes. I got a bit confused about the point you were making.
Yeah, what I want to say is we define the reference format only for our main supported schema formats. So if you support XML, we need to define it for XML. But at the moment, we don't support XML. So I don't see a need for defining it.
But okay, so I think there's a bit of a misconception when it comes to schema formats, because in reality, you can use whatever you want.
Yep.
XML is supported. When it comes to that, you just have to, from a tooling perspective, you have to implement your own schema parsers.
Yep. And with the
Reality
schema
is,
parser, I would bring also the reference parser.
I agree. So we have a lot of missing parts in the tooling ecosystem at the moment when it comes to references, because everything is tied strictly into JSON reference and whatever what's called JSON schema reference works. And even that is missing features. So we don't have the way that the parser currently works in our JavaScript parser or TypeScript parser. It's missing a whole lot of features in order to support non-JSON references. Because we have, like, for example, what you said, the schema parsers can't explicitly define any dereference behavior for custom schema formats. You're not able to, and we don't have any underlying supported library that we can use that bundles all of these things together in terms of reference, because the way that the parser works is that it dereferences everything from the start before the schema parsers even gets any information or is called. So the entire logic is not optimal for what we're trying to achieve. That's the reality. So there's a lot of change, a lot of things that need to change. It's just a matter of finding the right approach. And everything starts with the, for example, if we want to have a what you call official protobuf parser that we have now, it's important that the official schema format is there in order for people to know how, like what value to use as the schema format value. Otherwise, the underlying tooling will never understand it because they expect a specific value, but yeah, a mismatch.
True. Agree.
So I think we have to figure out where to begin and in which stages we can take, like how we can get from start to finish, whatever finish is.
I think we need to start with the PR that I have opened, but tune it a bit, because the first thing we have to do is introduce two different reference objects, because now we have one reference object for all the references, so we have to split it first. So we need a schema reference object and a reference object for all the other references to components, whatever. And then for schema, we have this schema reference object. And then schema reference object, we extend and specify more, like, okay, JSON for JSON files like Avro and JSON schema, we use JSON pointer. And for others, we should use, or we recommend to use, that's to clarify language. But that would be first step. The second is, of course, the pull request about schema and schema format, because without having schema format inside payload, or schema format in schema in components, we won't do anything really.
Agree. So do you want to pull it up?
I mean, I can for sure, like, because I have PR opened already and I did all the work with splitting references. So I think it's just one or two maybe sentences to modify to make it clear the direction we're taking, and then we can have a follow-up pull request, like to have it in small parts. Then a separate pull request where we just discuss the standards the language recommendations. I can mix it in this PR, but maybe better. The smaller it is, the better, because it already has a lot of noise because of this renaming of schema references to schema object, reference object, etc. So maybe this first. In the meantime, Heiko can continue with schema format. And then we have a third pull request where we actually really focus on the fragments, like on the standards for the fragments. Because now it's going to be hard to work on a wording that it's not yet in the spec because it's in the other pull request.
I agree. I think one thing that is missing from the PR is the default behavior, or this what's it called? Link towards schema format. Right? I'm pretty sure your PR doesn't explicitly state anything regarding the schema format and how you define whatever reference resource it is, right? There's no way. I can't remember.
You mean PR from Heiko, not my PR about the
your PR, yeah.
My PR.
Yeah, but I would suggest keeping Lukas' PR on hold before. So let my PR be merged before Lukas can proceed with his PR. So is it what he said? If you point to my PR, it actually will start more confusing than it had. And
I mean, the only thing that will change is where schema format is located, like that property, right?
We're not in much rush, so I can also wait with my PR. It's not a problem.
We agree this is not a breaking one. So yes.
I mean, the truth is that my PR doesn't make sense if you're not finishing your PR, because then what's the point of splitting? Yeah.
I'm so confused. I don't see the two issues as correlated.
So like basically
my
in my PR about $ref, we would introduce a new reference object, schema reference object. But it makes sense only if we actually can do something unusual with the schema reference object, something unusual, more unusual than with the other reference object.
But if we forget about Heiko's changes to like unify schema format and schema, then you have schema format in the message object alongside payload.
Yeah,
and
true. Mm-hmm.
Your change would enable payload to be schema reference object. So like I don't see them as correlated, but I might be wrong.
No. I forgot about this part that we already have schema.
Yeah. Should work.
Format.
You only need to switch some words if my API is done. So they can make progress here.
Let me get to, not sure how to make it concrete about something that we can do either now or after the meeting. Do you see any way that we can, like, do we need to review your PR, Lukas, or what's needed?
Review like now, or what do you mean by review?
So I guess you guys need to adopt it at the thingy about the schema format, then we can review it. And I am not sure if we need a POC for the parser. So is it possible? Is it not possible? The complete dereferencing at the parser? Can we estimate it if it is possible to do it like we plan, or?
Like in my PR, we're not the change that we're doing. It's not related to the parser. So
yeah, sure. I understand that. But what I want to avoid is creating a spec that's not possible to implement.
Oh, you're talking about like, okay, so
is it possible to implement this at the parser level, or do we run here into serious problems?
You're referring to enabling this for the schema parsers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So initially, I would say no. So the tooling perspective around this is going to be, at least in my opinion, it's going to be after the spec changes. So everything works as expected. But once that is merged and we start to open Pandora's box, we need to adapt the parser, of course, and how the parser interact with the schema parser. And this is the big and, we need a reference tooling that can handle this. And that's going to be a huge push, and that's not going to be an easy task. And we also need to figure out how exactly to engineer it, like where the responsibility goes and etc. And especially, like Fran said, like who to involve. Is there anyone in gRPC or Protobuf or Google or whatever that wants to join forces in enabling this, right?
One thing, because I actually forgot, like we're not targeting 3.0, right? Or are we targeting 3.0? We're not.
No, no,
right?
no.
Still
No,
3.1.
we should.
But at level tooling, we are about to breaking the API to the schema parser again.
I don't think you can say that we're breaking it. We just don't enable you to do this feature.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, again, I don't think that technically schema parser scope is to be also a reference parser. It can be completely separate package, a completely different plugin. So now you register plugin for schema parsing, but then the parser can handle the registration of the plugin that is doing is resolving the references. So because these are two completely separate steps in the
but both are be identified via schema format string. And this is why I would love to keep them together. Because then you register a schema format string and you give a schema parser and a reference handler. I would not tear it apart.
Again, it's very technical details about the parser implementation, right? So the reality is there's multiple ways to do it. We don't know the right one, but in order for us to even make that, we need to make sure that the spec allows it. Because if the spec doesn't allow it, there's nothing we can do in the tooling part anyway. So I think that if we focus on enabling this on a spec level, then we can start having the discussions or the technical discussions in tooling about what is needed there and which changes to do. But that's just my suggestion.
Yeah, it's okay. So Lucas will update the spec, we will review and start further discussions.
No, then I don't think it should go to 3.0, these changes. That probably should stay away.
Yeah, the PR is for, I would only create the PR for 3.1.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just keeping it on hold then. Because there's no place where I could merge it anyway.
Well, you can create the PR and let us discuss. Right after merging 3.0, you can create.
Rebase and cry during merge conflicts resolution. But yeah.
Or recreate it. It's probably easier. No, I would say that I have a couple of points towards your PR, Lucas, but we can continue from there because it's revolving around like nowhere within the schema reference object do we reference where we know about what we are referencing.
Yeah, so it's definitely not one-to-one applicable now to what we discussed. So I for sure first have to rework it. Yeah, that's obvious. Yeah.
And if you do it for 3.0, I would not be mad.
It's closed. It's frozen. No more features. There's only allowed 2 changes that are in work in progress. That's the only thing that's allowed. Stop.
Otherwise, we'll keep postponing. Yeah,
let's not do that.
If it's not a breaking change, it shouldn't be on 3.0, right?
Not if
Let's
can
leave
be
it there. And if we foresee that there will be a lot of breaking changes still pending, then let's change strategy and and just break it more often. And that's it.
I recap before heading towards the end of the meeting. We discussed about, or we started off recapping about what we did last time. And then this time it was more about the references and how we can enable this in tooling. And one of the major points or important points here is that we need to tie referencing together with schema format in one way or another in order to know which standard to follow.
Yeah.
Or at least that's somewhat in agreement here. Now, from the tooling side of things, it's still unknown how exactly we want to implement this, because there's a lot of unknowns in terms of both who should be responsible for the code, where should the responsible lie in terms of the tools, should the schema reference or schema parsers handle dereferencing all of this, or should the parser do it, or yeah, and the underlying library for enabling any of this is nowhere near, like, it doesn't exist basically. So we need to figure out which approach to take there. But we have to have spec in place in order for us to exactly know what tooling should enable. Does that pretty much sums it up? Or anyone want to add something?
That's okay. Chicken neck problem.
Or in short, we can say that we have pretty good solution in mind. We just need to test it. The question is, where can we put this update like this? Because it would be good to at least dump in one of the issues this idea that there's a schema format, that basing on the schema format, we apply different fragments resolution, or however we call it. And
Cool.
so we can share it. Well, we can already have discussion.
Oh yeah, and just to add, we also agreed that technically the schema, the JSON reference spec does enable us to use non-JSON value or reference non-JSON values. So we can build on top of it because of their wording within the document itself, because they use should instead of must. So we just need to add that resolution specifics that are relevant to us regarding the non-JSON stuff. And then we should be in the clear from that perspective. So we can basically use it as a baseline, which were my misunderstanding from the beginning.
Yeah. And to Lucas' point about having a specific place to probably where to follow, where to not forget.
Because I don't recall if we have some issue that we can just update, or we have to have a new issue.
If not, I think we should create an issue. Probably something like the one you created, Jonas, for 3.0.
Yeah.
Trying to list all things that we should probably be tracking or
We
taking into.
We can close issues as well. So if we make an epic now, we can close all of the non-relevant or something that's duplicate from the spec 3.0, just to make it more clear to have everything under a single issue, if that even makes sense.
Yeah. I will bet starting with a single issue, and once we are like getting into the details of all of this, probably after 3.0, right? Then we can start splitting this issue into multiple ones, and yeah, split basically.
Anyone on volunteering?
You know.
I can do it.
Perfect.
I wish, but I really can't during the next month for reasons.
No, but I can create an issue and just summarize the issue, so it's I'm
Okay.
not
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that I'm gonna now drive it, and
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
think we have more important things anyway.
Yeah. That's why I said like to dump all the things there, so that we can take it after 3.0, right? After release 3.0. Otherwise, it's gonna be too much.
Do we want to schedule our next meeting now, or should we do it as we get closer to the end of the release, or how do you guys see it?
So it's more about getting 9, 10 done. Do we make the further discussion in spec 3.0 meeting, or do we need a dedicated one to not piss off the documentation guys?
I mean, from spec 3.0 perspective, isn't the 9.10 pretty much done? Like the only thing that's missing is like voting on the two, like the options that you clearly stated.
Yes, but I published those options 3 days ago and no voting yet. So Fran is still missing. Lucas is pointing on to A, but I guess he wanted to point to B, as Jonas wanted. So it's a little bit
The problem is
here.
that for me they are both the same. So yeah, we
No, they're not both the
I was
same.
confused. I was also confused. That's why I asked on the ESU.
Please allow me to share.
I've seen that you are you replied. I gotta drop now. I have a meeting now.
Oh yeah,
and it's
I have another as well.
Okay.
But yeah,
before the end of today, I'll read your comment on the issue and vote for.
Okay, thank you. As soon as I got votes, I will update.
Right.
makes sense.
Now it doesn't work. Okay, now. Bye bye.
All right, thanks.
So,
Thanks,
guys,
folks.
bye.